Dude, we recording?
We're recording.
What's up, everyone? This is the Cruisin Cripples. I never had a nickname. My name's Josh. He is the one and only, the Cripple Casanova, the one and only KB. We are back after a 6-year hiatus? 7?
2011 was our last
Was it?
podcast.
Okay, so 8-year hiatus.
We've done a few things in between then, but as far as a podcast goes, 2011 was the last date.
Holy shit.
September 2011.
Dude, I turned 30 that year. I'm going to be 38 this September. Holy shit. Where did the time go?
As we like to say, out the window.
It has gone out the window. For those unfamiliar with us, we will try not to bore you too bad as we kind of go over what's been going on with us the past 8 years. Try to tell you some of the things we've done, some of the things we're gonna do. I, for one, am excited to be back on the air. I want to thank KB for putting up with my shenanigans and nonsense the past 8 years until it was the right time to bring this back.
Yeah, it's all about the rebooting of things. And just so I can clarify, you did have a nickname for about 3 minutes. It was Meals on Wheels.
I did. I did. Some things in our lives have changed since then. As a married man, I don't know if I should keep that nickname.
I'm pretty sure it's a copyrighted material now, so I don't think we can use that.
Can I still be Papa Wheelie?
Yes, you can be Papa Wheelie.
All right, I'm Papa Wheelie then.
Well, no,
that'll be my nickname.
You can't be Papa Wheelie because you're not a dad.
But you call me Daddy.
Let's not go there.
Too soon? Too soon?
It is too soon to go that way.
All right. We're kind of just going off the cuff like we normally do with our shows. I do want to, if it's okay with KB, kind of just talk about what we've been doing these past 8 years with our lives and kind of bring everyone up to speed. Real quick, in 2007, KB came to me and asked if I wanted to help him do a podcast. I wasn't doing anything with my life at the time, so I'm like, hell yeah. And I have to say it was one of the better experiences of my life. I had so much fun doing it. I even have our logo tattooed on my arm. It meant so much to me. One of the most rewarding things was just going places, people recognizing us and getting to help people at the same time. Some of the charity events we helped out with, specifically I want to give a shout out to Tattoo Tony in New Jersey for always being so kind to us when it came to the autism events he put on. So our main mission, we are here, we want to try to help bring disability awareness and advocacy to the public. However, we don't want that to be all we are known for, as we don't want our disabilities to define everything about who we are. It's just what we have, if that makes sense. I saw a really good meme the other day. It was a guy standing up talking to a person in a wheelchair. So should I call you disabled? Should I call you handicapped? The guy goes, you can just call me Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had people in the time since we've done a podcast, I've had people come up to me and ask how you would like to be referred to as, and what the disabled community as a whole wants to be referred to as. And there's not a one size fits all.
There's not.
Like you said, if you know one person with a disability, you know one person with a disability.
Exactly.
So for me, I try to be mindful of putting the person ahead of the disability. So it's not a disabled person, it's a person with a disability. But you might talk to somebody else and they feel the complete opposite and don't have a preference, or are okay with being labeled with the disabled first.
Or you could be a little bit more like KB and I, wanting to be a little bit out there and bring the topic to the masses a little bit more by causing a bit of controversy and calling ourselves cripples.
Yeah, Cripples is okay. I think.
It's gotten us a little bit of heat back in the day because it's a frowned upon term by some, but hey, we own it. It's us.
I would rather be called a cripple than handy capable.
Oh my God, yes. It's,
Or
that
or my other personal favorite, differently abled.
yeah,
Every
yeah.
human alive is differently abled.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm fine with it, but it doesn't really define
It no,
me at all.
it doesn't. So those are a couple nuances, if you want to call them such. Yeah, that I've experienced in our time away from having a platform to express our opinions.
Exactly. For those that are listening, I'm not sure when this will be aired. We are taping our show for the first time instead of going live, which is different. So I don't know if this will be put in at a different part. But I do kind of want to real quick kind of recap the past 8 years of our lives. KB and I are bi-coastal, just bi-coastal people.
I swear I thought you were going to say something else. So I'm really glad you specified that it was coastal. And
Well, I mean, we're we're in different stages in our lives than we were 8 years ago, KB. Things are a little different, but we are bi-coastal now. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Since the show last aired, I've gotten married. Live in a home with my beautiful wife, our two roommates, and our zoo of animals. And something I don't know if he'll edit this out, but I do want to make a mention of because I'm damn proud of him. KB actually finished college in this amount of time, and I couldn't be prouder for going back when he did. I always thought he was doing things at not the right time or at a bad pace, and I'm thinking, is this kid ever going to get his shit together? Well, guess what? He finally got his shit together, and I will never judge when he does things again because he knows when the time is right for him. So I just wanted to give him some kudos for that.
well, thank you. I should specify it, and I know you'll.
No, don't. Who cares? I know what you're about to say. Don't even do it. Don't even do it. Who cares?
Well,
The
I
degree is a degree. No.
well, no, a degree is not a degree because with one degree, you earn one set of salary, and with another degree, you earn a higher set of salary. So
Well, right, but you have to start somewhere,
yes, you do, and I
dickbag.
did, and I finished,
Yes, and
and
that's what we should be proud of.
and so hopefully, some opportunities continue to present themselves as such with that.
And if they don't, we'll do what we've been doing since 2007. We'll make our own.
Make it happen.
Yes. But that's what's been happening with us the past. God, I can't believe it's been 8 years. If being back doing it, it doesn't feel like much time has passed. But when I think of 8 years and how much has changed, it's crazy to me.
Well, yeah,
I'm happy.
you've moved from Philly to California, from California to Erie
Ugh.
to Las Vegas.
It's been a long journey.
That's about 10,000 miles of travel.
Probably. But speaking of moving, KB has moved as well.
Yeah, I'm no longer under mommy and daddy's roof.
KB no longer lives with his mommy and daddy. It took him till after 30,
Hey,
but he did it.
I did it. I'm coming up on a year being in my current living situation.
And did you want to divulge any information with what that is, or is that going to be off the show for now?
That's off the show for now,
Okay, just curious.
but that's
I'll be sure to text people and let them know that they don't get airtime.
not yet. I don't know if they want to have airtime, but
That's fine.
I have a wonderful girlfriend who I live with.
There we go.
Uh,
That's all I wanted to hear.
without her, I wouldn't have the opportunity to be out of my parents' house, and
And yeah, you got something special there for sure.
so very very special and important in my life, and
Absolutely.
would not have a lot of the opportunities that I have if not for her. So very blessed.
It's such a weird thing from where we were to where we are.
Yeah, yeah, it is very weird, but hey, the more things change, the more things stay the same.
We hope so, but I'm so excited to be back. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to start off. I think KB, we agreed to do this monthly to start off, right?
I believe so, depending upon what our schedules look like. You know,
Okay.
being bi-coastal, as you specified, and I'm glad you specified that it was coastal. Just the time difference and the work schedules
Sure.
changing, and so it's a little difficult to hammer down a certain day and time with any sort of consistency. So
Absolutely.
I
So
figured, once a month, and I'll try to get them uploaded the same time each month, so that there's some sort of consistency there.
right on.
And then if people, want to offer their feedback and want us to do more, or maybe they want us to do less,
It's possible, but we won't listen to those people.
we will follow. We'll follow what people are looking for. So
And as I said a few minutes ago, our basic message and mantra has not changed. We want to try to get disability advocacy and awareness out to the masses the best we can. But it's not going to be the only thing you hear on this show. It's going to be a part of the show, but it's not going to be the full show. You're going to hear hot topics in the news, things that pissed us off that month. Who knows what the case may be. You're also going to hear we very well may have some people come on later on, tell their life stories. Who knows? Maybe talk a little wrestling. Both KB and I are wrestling fans. One of us is a little jilted. One of us enjoys almost everything that they see today. So we'll get into a lot of different topics. But I'm really, really excited that we are, kind of reintroducing ourselves, rebranding ourselves.
it's the rewind.
It feels like it, man. It feels like no time has passed.
As long as it's not the remix.
To Ignition,
Exactly.
hot and fresh out the kitchen.
And we don't want that.
No, don't want to pee.
No, don't want to go that route.
Okay, yeah. We got to remember that it's not 2007 and the world's a little bit more PC than it was.
The world is certainly more PC, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I've seen a lot of people online complain about how we're too PC and too afraid to hurt people's feelings, but I think it's important to realize that people's opinions matter, and
Absolutely.
if somebody is upset by something, let's look at the reasons why they're upset. Now, there's certainly a difference between being offended for the sake of being offended, which I think some people can tend to be,
Absolutely.
myself included at times. But if we just take a moment to realize the situation from another person's perspective and try to understand what it is that's offensive or offending them about a certain issue or topic, I think there's a real need to be more understanding and sensitive to other people.
Who are you?
A lot has changed in 8 years.
My God. For those just listening for the first time, apparently I have a new co-host. He's not just soft in the middle now. He's apparently his heart is soft now. I don't know who the hell this guy is. So I guess we kind of reversed, because while I do agree with everything you said there, I also think stereotypical humor is the best type of humor. I'm sorry, ethnic jokes and cripple jokes are still my wheelhouse. I think they're hysterical.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still make cripple jokes at my expense around people. But again, depending upon the environment you're in, some people might not be comfortable with that. And just because it's your humor doesn't mean it's their humor. And so there's a certain line you have to walk, which I know for you is completely difficult because you're in a chair. So
I don't even understand what you just said. Like, sorry, don't understand it. I get what you're saying there, but I figure, or I believe, if the humor is at your own expense, if they're offended by what you're saying, then that's kind of on them because you're not making fun of them.
You're right, but from their perspective, and I can say this from experience, it's they may know somebody with a disability, so they might have a heightened sense of sensitivity to them. So even though you're making a joke about yourself and your disability, they may look at that as an insult to the disabled population as a whole,
which I still see as their problem, not mine. Because right. as we were saying, we want to look at each individual, not their disability.
Correct.
This is one individual that can make jokes.
Correct, but again,
we've really done a 180 with our personalities, haven't we?
We really have. So
it's interesting.
I try to be a little bit more sensitive to people's differences, or at least try to see why they feel the way they do. Excuse me, why they feel the way they do about a certain issue. Because if you can understand that, then it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree. It's about understanding. It's about empathizing. It's about being aware that your opinion isn't the only thing that matters in this world.
I haven't had much experience with people being upset with the jokes or anything I make. I definitely make people feel uncomfortable when they first meet me.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I take some sick pleasure and pride in that. Until some people just, after a while, they listen past my puns and whatnot towards my disability because I do it so often. I remember texting a coworker the other day the word roll, and I put pun intended. Didn't even get a laugh from her. She's used to it. Right. So I think in a sense it's okay to desensitize people like that too, though. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but I think in this, I hear what you're saying. I just think people people need to understand each individual handles their disability or situations differently. If I was around someone that, let's say, if I was around someone who had more of an issue, wasn't as comfortable, say being in a wheelchair or on crutches or whatever their disability may be, I think at 30, almost 38, I have enough tact not to make those jokes. I can't promise, but I think I do.
I would hope so. I think.
I hope so too. I just can't promise.
Well, you can't promise anything, and sometimes you're in the moment and words just come out, and then you realize after the fact, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I could have
30 times a day.
Maybe I could have said it a little bit differently, or we're all guilty of that. So
sure. Gave you an awesome segue like 5 minutes ago, and you just went on with something else. So let's just move into some topics. Why don't we, KB?
Yeah, let's get started because I did mention that it's the revival. Well, you did mention that it's the revival.
Yes.
And kind of with that, especially lately, I think there's been a revival of a lot of old material in various platforms that may have been better left alone.
Some without a doubt.
For those that are wondering what I'm talking about reboots.
Reboots. Are we talking specifically TV shows? Are we talking those movies with part 14s?
Yeah,
Are we talking
I'm talking movies, television,
Okay.
Primarily television because that's more of what I watch. I don't. I tend to not watch a lot of movies at this point in the stage of my life.
Same.
But Will and Grace reboot, Roseanne reboot, which is now the Connors. Murphy Brown, Fuller House,
Girl Meets World.
Girl Meets World. All that is now newly launched. So there's a lot of this nostalgia, I think, that's causing this desire to reboot. And I haven't watched all of those shows that I've mentioned. I don't necessarily know that in 2019 we need a reworking of old television shows or a continuation of where the series had last left off. Excuse me. So,
yeah.
I don't think there was any sort of continuity. For example, from where Will and Grace left off, their original airing, to where they picked up the reboot. I'm not sure.
There was in the very first episode.
Okay.
That's honestly I think that's all I caught was the first episode of it. It was okay, but I wasn't a huge Will and Grace fan to begin with, so I just kind of wanted to see what it was like, and it was a good episode, but it didn't catch my interest enough to put on my weekly watch calendar.
Excuse me. So I think I think the biggest issue I have with it is that we're looking, and we as consumers, we're looking for something that reminds us of simpler times, and we're not in simpler times.
Ain't that the truth?
And I don't know if it's an escapism or if we just want to feel more secure in the comfort of shows that we grew up with enjoying, that we feel like we have to reboot them or rework them in a way that kind of makes us remember the simpler times. But I'm not a big fan. Like I tried to get into some of them. I watched Murphy Brown for maybe 2 or 3 episodes. Wasn't a big fan. I appreciate what they were trying to do in today's current political climate, considering that was a show based around the news.
Absolutely.
But I don't think... I think there's too much rehashing old ideas and not an emphasis on trying to create something new.
Well, with that said, let me ask you this question, I guess. Are there any, since I think every single show we mentioned is a sitcom, have there, in the past few years, have there been any new sitcoms that have caught your attention?
Sitcoms, briefly, and I know it makes for terrible podcasting.
So no, not really.
There was one, and I didn't watch the season all the way through, so I don't know where it currently stands. There was a show on CBS with Damon Wayans' son.
Okay, I don't think I ever saw it.
So, as far as sitcoms go, no, there really isn't anything that I've sat down to watch. Now, dramas, certainly.
Sure.
I can watch all day and all night and be perfectly content. But as far as sitcoms go, I tried watching the Roseanne reboot and wasn't a fan of that. Even before she went on her Twitter thing and upset a bunch of people. I did enjoy the reboot of that, however. I did enjoy the Connors.
Yes, I did as well. I thought it got a little convoluted, but I enjoyed it. I think they kind of stuck with the personalities of who they were from the original, who they would grow up to be. Again, it got a little convoluted. Don't want to give spoilers away, but with selling babies or
Yeah.
all types of stuff like that, it got kind of weird, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
So, I mean, there was that. And I guess, I mean, it has been 8 years. And I didn't watch it during most of its run. But The Big Bang Theory was a pretty good sitcom.
Yes, that's in my opinion, it's the most. It's my favorite sitcom of all time. So there's been some. So, but basically, is it that they're trying to rehash all this stuff because they just can't find anything new that's funny, or like you said, are we trying to live in a simpler time, or is it a little bit of everything?
I think it's a little of everything. I mean, you're a wrestling fan.
Yes.
And you always say something to the effect of, there's only so many storylines you can tell.
Yes.
There's only
Which is true.
There's only so many episodes you can have of something before ideas just become stale or they become recycled. You can only put a new spin on something for so long.
Okay.
So, I don't know how many new ideas are out there, and I don't know. Again, I don't know if people are just wanting something reminiscent of simpler times and the comfort of knowing. Yeah, that reminds me of my childhood, so I want to go back to that and escape, the current climate of today's dramas and news cycle and whatnot.
And it's interesting when we look back to our childhood of the say excuse me, let me try that again in English. Late 80s, there we go.
Eight ladies?
Eight ladies. Well, that was my childhood. I don't know what you were doing. Anyway.
Certainly not eight ladies.
Well, that's why I am Papa Wheelie.
A drink to that.
There you go. Actually, that was a puff of nicotine. I had to give myself one for that one. I think I deserved that one.
I'll give you that.
Thank you. But going back to the late 80s, early 90s, in my opinion, it was kind of a treasure trove of those sitcoms. There, I can probably, off the top of my head, I could probably think of 10 to 15 different sitcoms from that time period that I watched on a pretty regular basis. That held my interest. So I'm curious why today's aren't doing it.
I don't think we have the attention span.
Okay.
To just sit down for a half hour.
Well, I do. I have to.
But you have to by choice.
It's not by choice.
Well, it's your choice not to find efforts to mobilize yourself in other ways.
Comfortable. I'm on a $500 cushion.
Is it a memory foam cushion?
I don't know. I don't think anyone wants to remember this ass, so.
Oh, God. I don't need that visual. Excuse me.
You asked.
I did. That was my fault. That was totally my fault. I'm sorry.
It's been 8 years, but I'm still me.
Well, that's good. I would hope that you were not changed in those 8 years.
Not much. Not much.
I need some comfort in nostalgia in my life. I'm not necessarily getting it from television shows, but the friends and family that I have. As long as they remain the same, I'm pretty good.
Absolutely. But going back to your main point there, that everyone from our generation, basically, the ones in their mid to late 30s, give or take, they're trying to recapture what they had. It's just interesting to me that it's our generation that's doing it. Like I said, if you go back to the late 80s, early 90s or so, it was all of these new sitcoms. There wasn't the people that watched sitcoms in the 60s and 70s rebooting all of the shows that they watch. So I'm curious why, for lack of a better term, this generation is just lazy.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me, at least.
It does. And give you an example. Just a little bit. I was on YouTube the other day, and because now you can just watch YouTube shows. You don't need television anymore. You can just watch your shows on online and streaming,
Yep.
and that's a major change in 8 years. But that's besides
Wow.
the point.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's amazing to think how many platforms have changed. I mean, not to toot our own horns, but I'm going to toot motherfuckers. Um, I think we were doing podcasts, and I think we were doing podcasts better than people. Some people today were doing podcasts before they were even called podcasts.
Yeah, and that's a matter of opinion. I think we're now a little bit more polished in what we're doing.
I guess we'll find out.
I think we have a little better understanding of the type of equipment we need to use and things of that nature. But going back to what we were talking about with reboots and things like that, I was on YouTube and there was an interview that Kel Mitchell did.
Okay.
From All That. I don't know. People from our generation, I don't know. You may have been a little bit too old.
I didn't watch all that, but I did. I have seen Good Burger.
Okay.
So, I mean, I know who Keenan and Kel are.
Right. So, Keenan and Kel have collaborated to, again, reboot All That, which was, children's sketch comedy back in the mid to late 90s for Nickelodeon. Mm-hmm. Well, that's all fine and good. But the current children that are on that show have no recollection, were not even born during the original airing of that show.
Right.
So, who are you doing the show for? Are you doing the show for a new generation of kids, or are you doing the show for the parents of those children?
Right.
And so, Kel Mitchell had done an interview, and he said he's trying to bring back, television so that families can sit down together, like the family sitcom, and sit down together and watch television and not worry about it being too gory or too offensive or too uncensored. It could be wholesome, it could be funny, it could be a little edgy, but it still be enough to cater to children and adults. So I watched the first episode.
Okay. It
did bring back a few of the original cast members. Certainly, they're not catering to me as a whole.
Nor should they.
I am not their demographic in any other way other than them bringing back some of the original cast members.
Okay.
With that in mind, some of the newer skits do tend to be current, and one of the things that really cracked me up was, do you know Marie Kondo? I think that's
no.
She's like this guru of home cleaning. So, the show Hoarders?
Yes.
She's like the anti-hoarder. So it's like, if you don't like it, if you don't use it, get rid of it.
Okay.
So they build a sketch around.
Don't ever let her in my house. She would drive me crazy. My wife would love her.
Yeah, I'm sure. So they built a sketch around her, and they called her Marie Kiddo.
Okay.
And it was just the girl playing the character, and she's like, does this bring you joy? And if it doesn't bring you joy, let's get rid of it. And by means of getting rid of it was like a wrecking ball coming through the wall, or like dynamite blowing the thing up. So obviously, it's one of those things where everybody can kind of appreciate the modernization of it, but I think it'll be difficult to I think, to maintain the success of that, because the people that you're really getting with a reboot of that type is the older generation.
Sure, sure.
It's younger kids don't know TLC, don't know the intro, and yeah, you're going to introduce them to that, but I don't know if that's going to stay. So I think it's going to be one of those fleeting reboots where it might work for a season or two, but it won't have the long-term success that the original did.
I feel like you made a pretty valid point when you were paraphrasing what Kel said there. And it's true. I never really kind of put that into perspective or put those thoughts together. There's really not many shows that are both kid friendly as well as adult oriented in enough. For example, I can remember watching, like, just for an example, Family Ties with my mom growing up, which had the problems with the kids. But then I remember there was an episode where I don't remember who the actor was. It was a very famous actor. I want to say Tom Hanks, actually. Played I think the mother's brother, and he was an alcoholic. There were things like that were a little bit harder hitting, but then everything else was pretty family oriented, or Family Matters. Full House, I think, was still geared a little bit too much towards kids, but Family Matters. I'm trying to think of some of the others. Even when it first aired, Will and Grace wasn't, at least what I would think is that risque. It was talking about different issues, because I guess just gay lifestyle back in the 90s was still spoken in hushed tones. But I think that's the biggest thing, and you hit the nail on the head there, that not everyone has a show, or no one, I should say, has a show these days that kind of can cater to anyone.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that was the case when I, still lived at my parents' house. My parents would watch one show, and I'd watch another show, and
Sure.
my sisters, we would all be in separate rooms watching our own shows because there was nothing on
Yeah.
that we could all just sit down as a family to watch.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's been interesting to see the changing landscape of television and the reviving of old shows, and just the way that we now consume that content. We're not sitting down in front of the television anymore. We're sitting in front of our laptops or our streaming devices or our iPhones, or there's so many other ways to consume entertainment that doesn't involve your television.
True, but wherever it is, I will be sitting.
You will.
So just throwing that out there. But I'm excited for this reboot. I think we have some fun things ahead, some fun times ahead of us. Like you said earlier, I do think we're in a different headspace, different mindset, different goals oriented, that can help this go further. We're not the perfect 18 to 34 demographic that we once were. Well, you still are for a few more months, but we're not that perfect demographic. So I think we might have to work a little bit harder in some instances, in some areas, to try to stay current. But we're gonna do the stuff that we enjoy, and we hope you guys enjoy it too. We definitely put a lot of heart and soul into this, and I'm, like I said earlier, I'm thankful he's stuck with me these past 8 years to get back to this point.
Yeah, well, you talk about not being the key demographic. We, as a whole, the disabled community, have never been a key demographic for anything.
This is true, except maybe electroshock therapy back in the 50s. But anyway.
But I mean, if you look around, if you're not disabled, you don't take notice of it because it doesn't affect you necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are disabled, the world at large is not designed nor built for your needs.
No, I mean, what if you do take what if you do take the entertainment world by storm? You get some credibility, and God forbid you win an award. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you God forbid you win an award, and you're supposed to go on stage too, right?
Yeah, so I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah,
That's how it's supposed to work.
usually you do go on stage to accept an award.
Okay, just checking.
So anybody that's anybody has probably heard somewhat of the issue of the Tony Awards recently. There's a performer, Ali Stroker, who is the first wheelchair
Sorry.
performer, I suppose, to win an award for the Tonys. She's in a wheelchair. She was in a wheelchair pretty much at a very early age, I believe, since the age of 2.
Oh wow.
I believe it was an auto accident that paralyzed her. So she went on, and she's on Broadway, and she's performing in Oklahoma. So I don't really know much about Broadway or whatnot, but
Whatnot.
but it did come across my news feed.
He's a sophisticated guy.
I'm very sophisticated. I'm educated.
Oh my god.
So it did come across my news feed online, and it's like, okay, so what's the story behind this? And so Ali Stroker is disabled, in a wheelchair. She's nominated for a couple of awards, one independently, and I believe the cast I guess the show as a whole was nominated for an award as well. So you would think, at least I would think, and maybe that's because I'm disabled and I try to be more mindful of these issues, you would think that the Tony Awards, as an organization, would be aware that, okay, we have a nomination that is disabled. What can we do to accommodate this performer?
Just in case they win.
Just in case they win. So, lo and behold, the crew, I guess, the show won an award in their category. Ali Stroker was not able to go up on stage with the rest of her cast because there was no ramp or any other type of accommodation for her to be on stage with her fellow cast members. Later in the show, I believe she did a performance of one of her songs in the show, and then after the fact, I guess it was right after her performance, her category came up for her award. So she was able to go on stage for that because she was already backstage.
Oh.
So she could be on stage to accept that award, but outside of that, there were no other accommodations on the stage to allow her to go up from the seating area to accept the award with her cast.
You'd think that they would either plan what awards are given out at a more strategic time, or they might have taken a sneak peek into the envelope and said, hey, why don't you come back here just in case you win? I mean,
right.
Something could have been done.
Yeah, but again, that's my point of, we don't live in a world that puts people with disabilities at the forefront of trying to figure out how I want to word that. They don't put us at the forefront of design.
No, of course not.
So we're always
a minority.
We're always an afterthought. It's like, oh, now we have to add this to accommodate you. It's not already pre-built into the design. It's not we're not at the forefront of thought.
Right. Not even close.
So it's a very frustrating thing, and kudos to her for her performance and for her being the first person in a wheelchair to win an award like that. It's a shame that it's 2019 and it's the first time an award has gone out to someone with a disability like that.
And there always has to be a first person to break that wall down. So I'm very excited for that. I am hoping to see more people, like Ali Stroker, who is a person in a wheelchair, have a role like this. A lot of roles that the person is supposed to have some sort of disability, on crutches, wheelchair, whatever. It's just an actor playing it. Whereas, in this case, obviously, it's her real life, and there's so many talented people out there that just kind of need someone like an Ali Stroker to break that wall down for them to hopefully have a chance in the next generation or so. I don't think it'll happen during our lifetime, where it's a normal thing. But there's a lot of things that are normal today that I didn't think would be happening in my lifetime either. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated in her acceptance speech was, and I'm going to paraphrase this.
Sure.
For anybody that's disabled or has a disability or knows somebody with a disability, you're now represented. By her winning this award, you're now in correlation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledged and maybe not wholly accepted, but you're being recognized. It's your talent.
It needs to start somewhere.
So yeah, like you had mentioned, it has to start somewhere, and it's great that in 2019 we finally kind of break that barrier. But even with that, there's still even with that barrier being broken, there's still barriers that have been highlighted because of that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's her kind of. You're putting a negative light on her when it's a glaring, obvious absence from the stage at that point, when she can't be up there to accept with the rest of her castmates. But it, unfortunately, I mean, this is only one instance where this has happened. Both KB and I have, probably more so me because I'm in a chair, but KB's been with me when it's happened a few times at least, where we've been in situations where we just, because we were invited places, we kind of just assumed the accessibility. I mean, they know KB's on crutches, they know I'm in a chair, so when we're invited places, we kind of just, unless we get a heads up, we kind of just assume there won't be any issue. I remember going to a concert in New York City and having to have my chair pulled up a flight of steps so I could see the concert. I remember going to a wrestling show in Baltimore that we never went into because we couldn't find an accessible way in there. So, yeah.
It's really challenging. It's disheartening. Really, you talk about it's just so many other issues and so many other groups of people are fighting to have their needs met.
Mm-hmm.
And deservedly so. But in that, people with disabilities always seem to be the last one to be acknowledged.
And it's interesting, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm kind of again, it's kind of the theme of today's show, how much time has passed since our last show and our reboot. I'm kind of thinking about the headspace I'm in, as also compared to where I live. I've noticed I don't remember having any issue like that in the past 8 years. Well, in the past 6 years since I moved to Vegas. It's just interesting to me how the West Coast really is. It's a different breed simply because it's newer and things are more accessible because they are newer. I mean, I grew up in one of the oldest, if not the oldest city in America, Philadelphia. Things are from the 1700s, and they want to keep that historic, the historic look, historic feel of that city. So I certainly understand why some things aren't renovated the way I hope they were, so I could, see them. But it's going to be an interesting ride for me on this show, speaking on these issues as they don't affect my daily life the way they used to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm finding it's funny and not in a ha-ha funny kind of way.
That's our lives, yes.
Just being independent and living on my own has opened my eyes to how disabled I really am.
Really?
Yes. Which is funny to me because, I mean, yeah, I've always known I'm disabled. I mean, I have a physical disability. There's no getting around that. There's no ignoring that.
Sure.
But I was at my parents' yesterday, and they were asking how things were going, and I was telling them, when I lived at my parents' house, I never felt disabled. I never felt like there was anything I couldn't do or couldn't reach or couldn't find a way to accomplish what I needed to do.
Is that because you just had taller people around you? Or I'm just curious because, I mean, you had a two-level house you lived in compared to a one-story bedroom. So
right.
or one-floor bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
One-bedroom apartment. I can talk.
Yeah.
Hook it on Pahonics.
I think it's a little bit of that. It's certainly, being shorter is going to be more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it goes back to the design of buildings and the way things are built. We're not necessarily, the building that I'm in is at least 40 years old.
Yes.
So 40 years ago, they weren't thinking of people with disabilities in mind. And such as, the ADA, if it was built before the ADA was enacted, well, they don't have to necessarily accommodate if it shows that it's going to put an undue hardship on the building or the facility or the company to make those changes. So just being in my apartment for almost the last year has really opened my eyes to just how difficult it can be to live when you're disabled, unless you have somebody who is building for you in mind.
I'm curious if because you and I have actually not talked about this even off air. I'm curious if you can give us an example or two what you mean, because I've been to your apartment. While getting into your apartment is a little bit of a hassle. The apartment itself, minus the bathroom not being large enough to fit my chair, I thought the rest of your apartment was quite accessible.
Yeah, I mean,
at least from my vantage point of being in a chair, we have the same disability but two different levels, so our stories are different in that regard.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not from a navigation standpoint.
Okay.
And again, my height might be a part of this issue. There's certainly there are cabinets I can't reach, but with that in mind, or with that being said, there were still, at my parents' house, just as an example, there were still cabinets that were high, but they were still at my level that I could reach.
Gotcha. And in your apartment, they're just out of your
They're
reach.
just out of my reach.
I gotcha.
We have light switches that they have those pull chains.
Hmm.
Again, just out of my reach. Being disabled, I can't climb a ladder and put a new chain up.
Okay.
It's that type of stuff. It's realizing that my disability, I'm not going to be able to climb a ladder and hang up curtains or hang up a chain extender for a light switch, or to hang something up that's just out of my reach. Everything's got to be at my height level in order to do that. And to go with the disability part of it, the complex itself, there's no curb ramps.
No, there are not. That
There's
part is difficult.
So you have to go, and one, there's no handicap parking unless you specifically ask for it. So you have to ask to have your spot made accessible, and really all that means is they paint the lines blue and put the wheelchair symbol in the parking spot.
Nice.
So that's great, and that's fine. That's a wonderful accommodation. It makes finding a parking spot a lot easier when it comes to coming home at night from work, and everybody's already home because they got done at 5, and you're getting done at 9:30 or whatever the case is, and finding parking is a little challenging. Being able to have that specific spot set aside is very helpful. But in the same token, if you're making a spot accessible, wouldn't you then make the sidewalk accessible to get onto it?
I mean, logically speaking.
So, yes, being on crutches, I can navigate the sidewalk and steps a little easier than somebody that's in a wheelchair. But chances are, if you're needing the handicap spot, having an accessible route to get onto the sidewalk would make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I guess it's things I've never really thought about. I mean, every single thing you just mentioned, I can't do either. Me sitting in my chair. I'm still shorter than you standing. But I'm lucky. My wife's tall enough, and we also do have a roommate who's over 6 foot, who reaches the extra tall places, and I kind of just take it for granted. And it kind of sounds like when you were living at home at the same time, you took those accommodations for granted, when you could just say, hey mom, hey dad, sis, whatever, grab that for me, whereas I kind of have been doing that myself for, well, basically my whole life. I've had someone to reach the top shelf if needed. But yeah, the world definitely doesn't cater to you. You have to, in a sense, find where and what works for you. It may hinder some places you can go. Hasn't really hindered me much, thankfully. I think we just gotta find a tall friend.
Yes, I mean that certainly helps, but again, to be a little serious just for a moment.
Sure.
Not everybody has the luxury of having a tall friend. So
No, I know.
and I know you know that. But just say, for instance, you're a single person and you don't have a roommate or a spouse or a significant other, that is able to do the things that you need to do. So,
Right.
One, it's very difficult to find accessible housing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two, on top of it being difficult just to find a place, you have to be put onto a waiting list, which usually is about a year to 2 years.
That is for yeah. That is for completely disabled housing. I'm just thinking from our standpoint. When we bought our house back in, God, 14, we bought this house. Yeah, 2014. All the renovations that were done to make my life easier. When you first walk into our house or roll into our house, whatever the case may be for you, when we first bought it, there was, I would say, a good, I don't know, 6 or 8 inch landing that was torn up, and now it's flat. We have ramps to the backyard. There were doors widened to allow me to enter, rooms without it being much of an issue, and that was all out of pocket. So I mean, I'm blessed that I'm in a situation where that was able to be done. But if you're not, and you have to wait a year, 2 years, sometimes in some cases, in some states, I've heard the wait list is up to 5 years or longer. That's definitely got to be troublesome. It's just weird how your perspectives have changed, or how people's perspectives change over time. I was so angry at so many disability issues when we last were a duo here. Now I'm just blessed that I have the luxuries that I do.
Right, and that's great.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's great that you have them. But to me, it goes back to this: your house wasn't initially built for someone with a disability in mind.
No, it was built in 1984, I think. So,
and that's the really upsetting thing to me, is that people with disabilities aren't a new thing. It's not like all of a sudden we hit 2019 and it's like a new group of people that have just been created.
Right.
Disabilities have gone on for a lot longer than you and I have been around. And
yes.
The fact that we're just now getting to a point where we have the ADA and we have laws in place that say you need to find a way to accommodate people with disabilities and have a structure, guidelines in place to meet those needs. Yeah, I think it's a real shame that it's taken so long. And just for me, like I said, it's just been an eye-opening experience. Feeling more disabled, being on my own, now that I have my own place, as opposed to when I had lived with my parents.
That's really interesting. That's still just a very interesting anecdote for me. I never would have thought of those things. I mean, it all makes sense. I've been to your apartment. I've been there with your significant other who's on the short stature. So
right.
It's not like either of you, even if you weren't in that house, if it were just her there, it would be some of the same issues you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And she's not disabled, so no. It's just she's short. Mm-hmm. So it would have some of those same issues. I get what you're saying. It's just interesting. Going back to you said the building of houses, and these things should be put into perspective to a degree. I think I'm on your side with that. But if we're already building a 2-3 story house, then I kind of think you're SOL there. But if, for an instance, like my house, you've been to my house, it's 1 story. Mm-hmm. I think a 1-story house, I think as of 2019, all 1-story houses that are built should be have ADA. The doors should be ADA with. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be a step out. Those sort of things for 1 stories. I think that's fair.
I think so, and I don't think it's unfair to ask to find a way to make a multi-story home accessible.
Well, there are ways. Unfortunately, it's just you pay for the chairlift or whatever the case may be out of your own pocket, or you wait for the grant for 5 years.
Right.
Those are your two options. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there are ways to make split level homes accessible. I believe you've been to my mom's old house in Philly, which was 3 stories.
Yes.
And my bedroom was on the second floor. I had a chairlift that got me to the bedroom. Then I
Mm-hmm.
would have to just crawl to my bedroom. But I mean, in my younger years, that was no problem.
Right.
Today, I probably have a heart attack trying to push or trying to crawl down a hallway that long. It was a big house.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and my mom's disabled too. She has MS. She's been on past episodes talking about the MS. We've done some work for the MS Society of the Delaware Valley back in the day. Um, like I said, it can be done. It's just either you do it yourself or you get put on a waiting list. But to do it yourself, you have to have the money.
Right, and I think that's the upsetting thing for me is that it costs so much to be disabled.
Yes.
Like the fact that all of these devices
Mm-hmm.
and setups cost so much just so that you could have quality of life is, to me, criminal.
I agree with you 100%.
I don't think, yeah, and people say, "Oh, life's not fair." Yeah, sir, but it's not fair to have, like, I go to these like, abilities expos, and they
Mm-hmm.
have these wheelchairs that allow you to, go from the sitting position to being able to stand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they should cost more than what you can, feasibly afford. I mean, these things are $40,000, $50,000 in some areas, and you have to make disability services affordable because how else are you gonna live?
Well, I think that's a two-part thing. I think they cost so much because we get raped with no lube by the insurance companies. Is one of the reasons that these things cost so much, and another fact is people with disabilities just don't make enough.
Right, and that's what I had mentioned to one of the pages I follow that had promoted one of their services. It was a completely accessible, like camper,
Okay.
but it cost $75,000.
Honestly, that's not that bad.
It's not, but how many people with disabilities do you know that can afford a $75,000 camper?
I absolutely agree with you, but if you can afford a camper, accessible or not, you're spending at least five figures anyway. So I mean, when you put it into perspective like that,
Mm-hmm.
that's not outrageous or awful. It's a lot of. I'm not trying to say it's not a lot of money because I don't have that much money.
Right.
I probably never will. However, you have to think about the people who do have that lifestyle who actually have those toys per
Mm-hmm.
se.
Right, and I think
That's not that bad.
I suppose not, but it's a very limited pool you're
Oh
pulling
God,
from.
yeah, yeah.
Not,
It's like three people probably.
not every disabled person is working and making 75, 100,000, $150,000 a year.
You know,
It's great if they are, but
I'm not.
that's that, and that was my argument. It's like it's great to have these programs and services, but if people with disabilities can't afford them, then it kind of makes them obsolete.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. They want you to have to for some of the, not the camper per se, but for that chair you mentioned and other devices like that, they do want you to have to go through their through your insurance company, because insurance will pay them part of it, but then you owe your insurance company like a quarter of that or whatever, and no one can afford that either. So
Exactly. So it's just,
it's kind of a lose-lose.
It is, and that's what I was getting to with the initial point is the world at large is not designed for people with disabilities.
No.
And that's and if nothing else, I want people to at least try to empathize with that, or see it from that perspective of not saying, oh, I'm so grateful to not be disabled and not have to have that challenge, but to realize that there are people out there that are living with challenges, and how can we, the disabled community and the non-disabled community as a whole, work together to kind of eliminate some of these barriers.
Yeah. I don't know. I always go back to adapt, improvise, and overcome with a lot of things, because I mean, growing up in Philly, I've had to adapt, improvise, and overcome quite a few different challenges, both related to my disability and not. So I'm not saying everything can be adapted. Not everything can be improvised, and you can't overcome everything. But instead of there's a lot of people in the disability community that are woe is me. Let's try to find some solutions that work for you. And then if it really does work for you, how about you tell a friend who tells a friend, we start a chain reaction of these improvisation. I don't know how to say that word.
Improvisations.
Improvs. What he said. We start doing that, and then we take kind of control of this shit ourselves.
Yeah, and I encourage people out there that are maybe listening to this. If they have suggestions, email us at thecruisincripples@gmail.com. That's cruising without the G. I think we're going to wrap things up here in just a minute. So I want to thank everybody that may have tuned in and rejoined us or joined us for the first time. We appreciate the support and the listenership.
We definitely do. I definitely want to second that. I want to thank everyone that's been with us for the past 12 years on and off. The people that still ask us every once in a while, hey, when are you going to do that again? Well, guess what? Here we are. Be careful what you wish for, because unfortunately you might get it.
We're back. I don't know if we're better than ever, but we are back.
I don't know about that either. I guess time will tell. Well, give us a few months to shake the rust off. We definitely will be back again. I feel reinvigorated. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Again, want to thank KB for sticking with me and allowing me to go on this journey with him once again. We're going to be back with a new episode probably sometime next month. For the time being, check out our Facebook page, like our Facebook page. KB in particular, I'm going to do my best to follow his lead, but KB in particular is very interactive on that page. We post some really cool articles. Please give us all the feedback. What you liked, what you didn't like, that's fine. We're relearning what we're doing here, and we're enjoying doing it. Give us some topics you want us to discuss. And again, our shows are not going to be solely based on disability awareness topics, as you heard with our TV topic earlier. It's not all going to be about the woe is me disability issues or anything like that. So please feel free to give us any topic you want to hear.
Yeah, because I am not short on having opinions about anything.
You're just short.
I'm just short. Life has certainly proven that in many, many ways and many different circumstances. So, got the short end of the stick there, but it's one thing that It's all about the mindset, and I think disability is just one of those things that we just have to be a little bit more mindful of, knowing that somebody's got a challenge, and you know, not necessarily woe is me, but how can we figure out ways to make their experience a little less difficult.
And let's see if KB will keep up with me on this one. And as we always say, KB, when adversity hits you, what do?
Keep on rolling.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.